Begin the current Daf Mesechtes Bava Kama Daf Samach Gimel. We'll begin 13 lines down with the top of the Amud. But the Gemara is in the middle of a conversation from the previous Daf, which opened up our 7th parak Meruba, discussing that the parameters of kefil are more than that of Dalad Vehei, which is when you not only steal, but you also slaughter or sell the ox or the sheep. In what way did the Mishnah say it's bigger? It says in one way. It says that Dalad Vehei is only by a shiur and a seh, but kefil is by davish shish beruchaim, or even if it doesn't have a ruchaim. So the Gemara was exploring Minan and Mili, where do we know this from? And the Gemara originally is attempting to explain it as a klal prata klal. And then the Gemara has questions and says, well, it doesn't seem to work out. The last thing we said was that you're right. It's not a klal prata klal, because then we wouldn't be able to figure out all the different terminologies mentioned as the prat. Rather, it's the word kol is a ribui. That's going to get us into a conversation regarding, ribui? Okay, now we have to understand ribui, miyut, and ribui, because again, there's two classic ways how to interpret the Torah when you have a general, a specific, and a general, or a general, and a specific. But the point is that that's where the Gemara is transitioning at this point, as we'll shortly explain. Turn to today's daf, throughout the entire world. Some of the things we're discussing in today's daf are kefil, which is the halacha of that when someone steals, or even as we'll explain, claims that it was stolen, he's liable for a punishment of kefil, double the amount of what he stole. The difference between riba and miyut and klal prat, which is different ways of expounding the Torah, and they have different ways of transitioning, and that you come out with different interpretations based on if it's a klal prat versus a riboy and miyut, because a klal and a prat is going to be less inclusive, let's say, than the riboy and the miyut, because riboy is really including everything. It's going to just exclude one thing. Klal prat, on the other hand, is going to say that has different ways. It's just more of a comparison than just adding and excluding. And riboy miyut riboy is the one that you're adding on everything. You're just going to exclude one thing, versus the klal prat. The klal, let's say, is ke'ena prat, whatever similar to the prat. Tumas nevela is the halacha that when a dead animal dies, it has a certain nevelas, which again depends on what type of creature it is, what type of tum it has. So there's a difference regarding when a shimer has something and then you want to get it back from the shimer. So it depends on what he says. This Toin Tan is gana bepikadin, which is that he's watching the deposit for you, and then you come to him and he says, hey, he claims it was stolen. Now, there's a Toin Tan is gana baveda. Let's say it's not by a deposit. I found the lost object. So the guys come knocking and say, I heard you found my thing. He says, yeah, it was stolen from me already. And then the Toin Tan is ovid bepikadin, which is you claim it was lost. When it was given to you as a deposit, you claim, oh yeah, but I lost it. So that's a different halacha of claiming that it was lost than claiming that it was stolen. So we begin the current daf, Daf Samach Gimel. We had mentioned in the Mishnah the following halacha. We said, Midas tashlumi kefil nehegis bein b'davish shish beruchaim, bein b'davish shem beruchaim. That you're going to pay twofold for stealing either live or inanimate objects. How do we know this? So the Gemara originally explained, it says in the pasuk, I'll call var pesha, for any negligence, I'll shar chamor, I'll say balsam. So I'll call var pesha as a klal. I'll shar chamor, I'll say balsam as a prat. Then it says, I'll call aveda, which is a klal. Then Yisham Shnaim L'Rei, which is the halacha of kefil. So that's a klal, prat, a klal. Yet to done, elkein prat, which is ma prat before it's metal of a gufam amen, just like what was specified. This movable item and has intrinsic value. I've called them metal of a gufam amen, which would seemingly be anything. It just excludes karka, which is not metalblin. It excludes avodim, which is compared to kakars. And it excludes shtaris, which even though it's movable, it's not gufam amen. But anything else, whether it's live or inanimate, are going to be liable for kefil. That's what the Gemara originally said. The problem is, said the Gemara, is if you're really saying a klal prat a klal, then let's get really specific. The specifics are things that the nevela is metamba b'magamasa. Maybe also anything is metamba b'magamasa, but not oifes, because although the Gemara says that it says val salma, and that doesn't transmit to Mr. Velas, but the Gemara said, but Bava Chaim, since each klal prat you darshan by itself, it's like each one has its own klal prat klal. So we're going to say that So which one would you say not to say? You're right. If it said shiur, I would say only Krav L'Gam Mizbeach. If it's al Chamar, I would say only Kodesh B'Uchar. If it's al Seh, so I would know to include Eivus Tahayros, which at least Mitam B'Godma Beis Abliya. But non-kosher birds would be excluded because they do not transmit Tumah at all. So therefore, that's what the Gemara is up to right now, and said, okay, you know what? You're right. We don't know it from a klal prat klal. We know it from the word kol is a ribui. So if it's a ribui, so we can include everything, not just even just a kosher bird, but even non-kosher birds, and even not even living creatures, any type of thing. That's where the Gemara now continues and says, first the Gemara asks, on this idea that you're saying that the word kol is a ribui, it's not a klal prat klal, it's like it's including things, it's a different type of halachic inclusion. Says Gemara, is that really true? The Rebbe says the word kol, it's adding. By ma'aser it says kol. We're in the halachas over here of stealing, and in a different context, in the halacha of ma'aser of tithing, it says the same word kol. And yet b'kadushin lebechlal prat, we expounded in the klal prat. The time like Linda Brisa. Paul says in the Varim that when you have ma'aser sheni, it's too hard to take it all to Yerushalayim to eat it. You could transfer it and put it into money. What do you do with the money? So says the Torah, and you'll put the money when you come to Yerushalayim, whatever your heart desires. That's a klal. That's a general. It sounds like whatever you want. Then it says, babakar, batzayin, bayayin, b'shecher, with cattle and flock, and with wine, and with hard liquor. That's prat. That's specific. It tells you certain objects. And then it says again, whatever your heart desires. Well, that's chaz of a kol. Let's go back saying a general rule again. That's a klal prat the klal. General, specific in the general. Yet done prat. So then it has to be similar to the specifics, which are ma prat before. It's just like the specifics are explicit. They're pre. They're a derivative from a derivative. So let's say animals are a child from a child from a child. So too the wine is a derivative from the previous grape seed. So what's that excluding? So let's say water, salt, mushrooms, truffles, these are things that are not pre. So those would be excluded from pre. And it also has to be things that are v'geduli karka. Well, even though animals don't really grow from the ground, but at least they nurture, they nourish from the ground, which excludes fish, which their nourishment does not come from the ground. I've called pre v'geduli karka. So to anything that you want to buy with your Ma'aser Sheni funds has to be a derivative from derivative and grow from the ground. Okay, that's not our main idea. The main thing we're asking is that you see that it says the word kol, and still you're not darshing as a ribui, you're darshing as a klal, and then prat klal. So we're back to our question. In our context, the laws of Geneva, why you're saying that you're including everything? How can you include non-kosher birds? But based on the klal prat klal, it would be excluding that. And it says kol, and who said kol is ribui? You see here by meiser, it says the word kol, and it's a klal prat klal. Somebody said no, bakoil klala, kol ribuyuhu. Over here in the pasuk of Meiser, the words of Anasadik has a bachol. Bachol is a klal. The word kol, like we have in the halacha of Geneva, is a ribui. That's answer number one. Or if you want, you could say, no, the truth is kol klal. You're right. And even kol is a klal. And that wouldn't be the difference if it has a base or not. But miu kol the hacha ribuyuhu. However, over here, when it talks about the halacha of Geneva, here it's a ribui. Why? Because let's see, it says beforehand, in the beginning of the parasha, klal prat klal. Where's that? Where does it say previously a drush of klal prat klal? Because there's actually two psukim that it has. The pasuk previously says ki'itin ishal re'eyu. The man's going to give to his friend, which the Gemara in Perek Hazav darshans that it's regarding the shvuas hashemim, by the oath that the custodian makes, to say that you don't make an oath only on something that's similar to the prat, which is movable and has intrinsic value. Where do you see that? Because ki'itin ishal re'eyu is a klal. It says whatever you give to your friend to watch. Then it says kesef v'kelim, money or vessels. That's a prat, that's specific. Lishma to watch, hadav v'kol. And again, it's saying a klal. So you already have in the context of an earlier pasuk that also refers to kefil, a klal prat a klal. So if you think this later pasuk that's coming to tell us regarding kefil, it wants us to darshan namil klal prat huda asa, like you're asking, and therefore you should only include for kefil that which is ke'ena prat, and therefore back to our original question, how would you know, let's say, non-kosher birds? But if it was being darshan as a klal prat to klal, nichtebech man lahani prati, you should have said these specifics, gabeheich klal prat, by the earlier one, by the first pasuk, and to darshan each one independently, like you said, and then we would come out to exclude the non-kosher birds. Because in the first pasuk it also is talking about kefil. So put them all together. Why make a new klal prat to klal? You already have a klal prat to klal. Put in there those pratim that you wanted to say. So then why do you need a second pasuk? Again, a new klal with the words kol dvar pesha. Shema mina, obviously that this klal of the second pasuk is not a klal. Because if you wanted to darshan kena prat, you already have your two bookends of klalim and just put in the pratim. Rather, it's ribuyuhu. Rather, it's an inclusionary concept. And regarding kefil, we're not going to darshan as klal prat. And the first pasuk that says klal prat, Rashi explains that regarding the shvua, the oath, as it says after that, b'nikr balabais elikim, that's regarding the oath itself. But regarding the halach of kefil, we're not going to expound what you're liable kefil on regarding a klal prat a klal. Rather, we're going to darshan as a ribuy. So now says the Gemara, okay, hashdam et kol ribuy. Now that you said that the word al kol dvar pesha is a ribuy, including everything, so kalani prati lamali. So then, why do you need these specifics, which you're making into like really a ribuy, miut, and ribuy? If you're including everything, what are you excluding with these miutim? Up until now, we use these terminologies as to qualify what's similar to them, because we're saying klal prat klal. Now that we're saying it's a ribuy, ribuy is including, so including everything. So now when you're saying these specifics, well, why are you saying specifics then? So yeah, when you say specific, then you're coming to exclude. How so? One of them is excluding the if it's land. One's excluding slaves, which says even though previously the Gemara learned out that slaves are excluded because it's compared to karka, so why do you need a special another terminology? Let's say it says ashar, chamar, al-seh, and these are ones excluding karka, ones excluding avodim, ones excluding shtaris. So why do you need a special terminology to exclude avodim if previously we had said that Eved has the same halach as karka? Says Taisus, here since it says the word kol as a ribuy, so each and every specific needs its own miyut. Okay. And next terminology is excluding documents, which Taisus really says the first one to be excluded should have been shtaris. Al kapanim, you have three, al shar, al chamar, al seh, each one's excluding karka, and one's excluding avodim, one's excluding shtaris, because they're the most dissimilar, as we said in the halach of kena prat. And then when it says salma, a garment, again, remember this is regarding the context of a ganav, of what is he chayiv for. So a garment generally has identifying features, like the Gemara says in El Metzias on Daf Chav Zayin Meraf and Bab Metzia. So if you tell me a garment, you're excluding something that's not distinct, meaning that the owner doesn't have a siman regarding it. If you steal such a thing, you're pater from kefil. And then when the pasuk says al kol aveda, on every lost item, so that's likad Reb Chibar Abba, which is Reb Chibar Abba Amar Yechon, he says hatoyin tanes ganav. If someone claims something was stolen from him, as it continues in the be'aveda, meaning someone finds a lost object, who subsequently the guy comes knock on his door, says, "I saw your sign that you found a lost object." He says, "Yeah, but it was stolen from me after I found it." But really, it wasn't stolen. He got really attached to this lost object that he found. He really likes this puppy, and he thinks he's going to keep this puppy. And he says, "I'm sorry, it was lost. It was stolen." So b'sham tishul kefil. Being 20 times ganav, you have to pay kefil. Like it says in the pasuk, al kol aveda sheyomer, for every lost thing that he's going to say. Meaning, this pasuk, the Gemara tells us later on, the sugya is really talking about not a ganav himself, but a 20 times ganav, claiming that it was stolen, which you have the same liability as a ganav itself. And they're saying, al kol aveda. Where does aveda come in? Meaning, buy a lost object, not just buy a pekan, buy a lost object. If you claim tiny is ganav, you're going to be chayv for the same liability of kefil. Okay. Now the Gemara continues. related to this halacha of kefil by a shomer, it's non hasam. We learn in the Mishnah over there in the Parak HaGozel Eitzim later on the Kov Ches Amid Beis. Now let's say someone says, "Heichin pigdoini, where's my deposit? Where's the thing that you're watching from me?" Amalei says, "Avad, it's lost." And now a shomer chinam who says it's lost is pater. Says it must be yachan. I'm going to make you take an oath. He says yes. He swears to it. But then witnesses testify that he ate it. Which that it says he ate it. It says a chiddush that even though it's not here anymore because you ate it, it's gone from the world. You're still going to be exempt from kefil when you make a claim that it was lost, because the whole liability is only by toyin tainas ganav when you actually say it was stolen. Even though lost and stolen is the same exemption for shemechinam, the liability of kefil would only be if you say that it was stolen. Here he says it was lost, so therefore, the halacha is that mishamas hakeren. He pays for the principal because obviously he actually consumed it himself, but no kefil because kefil is only by tainas ganav. Now, let's say he admitted ultimately by himself. This after he swore falsely. So this was called that masham keren b'chemish v'asham. He has to pay the principal and the added fifth. And a carbon asham, like it says in the Torah, mikra hey, if someone swears falsely, that's called asham gizelis, which is when you swear falsely regarding something that you stole, and it only comes when a person admits on his own, because even though it doesn't say explicitly in that parasha that he admitted, but it says by the asham of the gezla ger, when you steal from a ger, parasha nasa is vadu es chatasam, they confessed, and therefore we compare the same halacha to asham gizelis too. And the chemish is only when there's an asham. So when you have you swore falsely and you admit, then it's a different halacha. Then you pay the principal, a fifth, and the carbon asham. Okay. Now let's say a different case. He comes and says, "Heichin pigdoini, where's my deposit?" And so now the shemechin, instead of getting off by saying it was lost, I'm like negative. I said it was stolen. Then he says, "Mashbiachamni," says, "I'm making you take an oath." And the answer is, "Amen." And then subsequent witnesses testify that he stole it and he still has it. Sham should be kefil. Here Taisa says the chiddush is on that it was stolen. And even though it's around, so you could still just give it back, and then you have a kefil because the mice you claimed there was tines dan gamas. It's just spelling, like just the different words achloi and gumvoy, that it says different terminologies as a chiddush in either case. But be that as it may, here when you made a claim at tines gamas, masham tishul kefil, you have to be kefil. Maybe admit on his own. Okay, you pay the principal, the fifth, and a carbon asham. This is what the Mishnah says in HaGozel Eitzim. Says the Gemara, Katani mi. Okay, but one thing we see is between tainas ganav. When you make a claim that it was stolen from you, then we say the b'sham tashul mikei, you pay kefil. But between tainas other, when you claim it was lost from you, then b'sham tashul mikei. That's one thing we see that you don't pay kefil. Moreover, another thing. And even if you make a claim that it was stolen from you, it's only b'shvua. After you swore falsely, like we said, he said, I'm making you take an oath, then it's only then that you have to pay kefil. Let's say you just denied it, you said, no, it was stolen from me, but you didn't swear. And then witnesses come and say, well, what do you mean we saw it in your backyard? In the you don't pay kefil. So those are two halachas. One that only applies between this guy, but also it's only when he swore. Says where do we know this from? So the Gemara turned the Brisa back onto the trail of exploring Psukim. The pasuk says in Shemais, Im yimatze haganav, if you're going to find the thief. What's this talking about? It says the Brisa between times ganav. It's regarding the homeowner that claims that this deposit that he was watching was stolen by a thief. Like it says in the pasuk, V'gunav mi beis ish. It says it was stolen from the house of the man. If you find the thief, Yisham Shnayim. So it's Hakasam Adab, but the pasuk is talking about that he's making such a claim. And it's saying, Im yimatze, Haganav means if you find that he's the Ganav, then Yisham Shnayim, then he pays double the amount. Says the Brisa, really? Is it the way I'm interpreting the pasuk? At the Omer, you say between times Ganav? Is really by a guy who claims it was stolen? Or Maybe the pasuk is talking about by a thief himself, meaning that really the custodian is telling the truth. It turns out that a thief stole it from him. Says the Brisa, no. When the pasuk says, Im lo yimatze haganav, the following pasuk says, and if you don't find the thief, Gemara later on is going to explain that this is talking about by Toyin Tanas Ganav. The guy makes a claim that it was stolen. Where it turns out that because he himself, you don't find the Ganav because he himself stole it. So that comes out that the previous pasuk also is B'Toyin Tanas Ganav because of the pasuk is talking about when the guy made a claim that it was stolen. Where it turns out that the homeowner was lying when he said it was stolen. Gemara later on is going to ask, why do you need two psukim to say the same idea of Toyin Tanas Ganav and for both teaching the same halacha? So again, these are psukim in Shemais Chabeis. When it talks about the shoymrim, so it has these psukim, and the question is about how to interpret it. Is it talking about you could really interpret it two ways, like the pasuk says, "Ki initial re'eyu keser became lishma." You're going to give him something to watch, and the begunim basically is going to be stolen from the house of the man. If you find the guy, he's going to pay double. So the question that we're asking is, well, who's the guy? It was stolen from his house, really, or he claimed it was stolen? When you find the ganav, you find the real ganav, or he was the ganav? So this brisa wants to say that, yeah, because look at the next pasuk. If you don't find the thief, so you bring the balabais elikim, you make him swear. So what do you mean? Because he's claiming that it was stolen. Oh, so you see that's talking about claiming that it was stolen. So then that means to say the previous pasuk is also talking about when he claims that it was stolen. But that's one brisa. Now the Gemara brings a brisa number 2. Tanya de learn another brisa. Im yimatzi aganav. Back to the first pasuk. If you find the thief, so this brisa holds, it's like the shomer said. The ganav atma kasam adab. It's actually the thief himself is the pasuk talking. You find the ganav because it actually was stolen from him, and that ganav has to pay double. Says the brisa ganav atma. Yes, again, this brisa is explicitly not like the first brisa. Are you saying this is by the thief himself? The pasuk saying that the ganav has to pay kefil? Or you ain't times ganav? No, it's talking about if the guy claims it was stolen, and if it turns out that he's the ganav, is what the pasuk is saying, is that he pays double. Says the brisa, no, because when you have the next pasuk, if you don't find the thief, okay, so already 20 times that pasuk is obviously saying you don't find the thief, you bring him to Bezdin. Why bring him to Bezdin? Because he's claiming it was stolen. Oh, so then the next pasuk is talking about 20 times ganav. So you already said that already in the next pasuk. So man becomes, what am I doing with the previous pasuk? You find the thief. It can't be that that we're talking about him because that's the next pasuk. So it must be the the first pasuk is talking about the thief himself. Okay. That's the machlekes between these two brises. It says the Gemara, the Kulam Amiz, but everyone agrees that the second pasuk, Im lo yimatzei ganav, if you don't find the thief, but 20 times ganav, is talking about regarding the guy who claims it was stolen. It says about my mashma. Where do you see from that pasuk that it's not talking about a real thief? If you don't find the thief, then the homeowner has to come and swear. So Amar Rabbi says because Im lo yimatzei, it says if you don't find. What do you mean if you don't find? If you don't find what? If you don't find kamasha amar. You don't find like what he said, which is that he's claiming it was stolen. Like it says, in the previous pasuk that was stolen from the house of the man. So what does it mean you don't find like what he said? Because Elishu Atzmegam, because he himself stole it. That's what the pasuk says of a nikra balabayis elakim. In other words, that he already swore that he was v'lo shalach yadai, that he didn't touch it. What does it say afterwards? I'll call Rav Pesha. That Yishalim Shnaim, says the pasuk, that he has to go ahead and pay double. You see from the second pasuk, already the halacha of 20 times ganav, that he has to pay kefil. Says the Gemara, Uminalan, how do you know that this v'nikr balabayis elolakim meant that the b'shvur, that he made an oath? Remember, because we're trying to explain that where do we know the halacha of by 20 times ganav, that you're only liable if you swore first. So this was the source, because it says we know the second pasuk talking about 20 times ganav, and it says v'nikra balabayis that he had already come to court and he swore. How do you know it means that he swore? Katanu in the brisa. It says v'nikra balabayis elikim. It says the homeowner comes, the shomer comes to the elikim, to the courts. That's l'shvua. That's to swear, because since he's claiming begunav bebeisa ish, like the previous pasuk says, he has to swear that it was stolen. That'll be off the hook. Says the Brisa, is that really true? Is that for an oath? And it maybe comes to court for the judgment, for the payment of a shemechinim, who he's claiming that it's stolen, to have to pay. Because this pasuk is by Hashem Echinam, like the Gemara says about Mitzvah of Tzalik Dal Mabeis. So that says the Brisa no. Nemeshlichas yad lamata. The terminology shalach yadai, if he touched it, if he stretches out his arm on the deposit, which he's not supposed to use, it says it later down, meaning by Hashem Echinam, when it talk by Hashem Esachar, when it's a einus, when it's something beyond his control, which a paid custodian is exempt. It says Shvus Hashem Ti Ben Shneim. An oath of Hashem will be between the two of them. If he didn't touch it, then he'll be off the hook. Now it says previously, in the earlier pasuk, the pasuk that we're talking about, of Hashem Echinam, which says V'nikar Balabais Elikim, that he comes to the court, if he didn't stretch out his hand. So both of them say the halacha of Shlichas Yad, so we make a comparison. Just like over there, it's clear. It says Shvuas Hashem Ti Ben Shneim, and it says the word Shlichas Yad, and it's for oath. Avkan Shvuas, so over here, by Hashem Echinam, it's also for an oath, and that's how we know V'nikar Balabais Elikim means that they take an oath. And therefore, that is the source of the halacha that we see that Toin Tan's Ganav, which everyone agrees the second pasuk is by Toin Tan's Ganav, is going to be only when he makes a shvua, like it said, B'nikar Balabayas El Elikim. Okay, but now it says the Gemara. Now we have to try to figure out how to translate the sources between these two different brises. They had a machlekes regarding the first pasuk of Imimatze Haganav. Who are we talking about? The Ganav himself or the Toin Tan's Ganav, the Shomer? Says Gemara according to the time of the second brisa. That says Chad beganav, Chad b'toin tan's ganav. The first pasuk is by the thief himself. The second pasuk is by the guy who claims it was stolen from him. That both of them have a liability of kafel. Time of sibi trade cry. Now we understand why there's two pesukim. One is teaching one, one's teaching the other. According to the first brisa, the tavai b'toin tan's ganav. Both are talking about when the guy claims it was stolen from him. Trade cry lamali. Why do you need two pesukim to teach the same idea of toin tan's ganav? They said Chad lemuute tainis avad. One is excluding if he makes a claim that it was lost from him. And then witnesses testify, no, it wasn't lost from him. He stole it. He has it in his backyard. There's two psukim.
So which one is going to be?
So it doesn't say which one. It's just that there's two psukim. One of them will be telling us why repeating it two times. They're telling that it's only when there's a what? No, because it's talking about Geneva. It's saying that because you make a claim, they're both by claiming it was stolen. Why repeating a claim that it was stolen two times? They say it's only when you claim that it was stolen, because really by Shem Echinam, which is what we're talking about, he gets off the hook whether it was stolen or lost. So it really is the equivalent for him. So it's saying that it's only when you claim that it was stolen. But if you claim that it was lost, and then the witnesses testify that you stole it, you can be patur kefil, even if he swore that it was lost, that we're saying that no, it's only going to be by Toin Tan's Ganav. Okay, now the Gemara asks, and this is how it always often is by drushes, Gemara goes back and forth, says, okay, that's what he does. Salmandam, according to the one who says Chad beganav, Chad b'Toin Tan's Ganav, that says the first pasuk is by the thief, and the second pasuk is by the guy who claims it was stolen to Lemiat, where you don't have any extra pasuk. So the Mutai Tan is Abba Menale. Where does he know that it's only by a claim of when it was stolen? Chayr should be the same thing. The same false claim that's going to get you off the hook. How does he know to exclude when you make a claim it was lost? He knows from Meganav Haganav, which Tais explains that the word Haganav sounds like the distinct Ganav, as we find in Gemara Pesachim and Gemara Chulin, the Ha'ayla, the first Ayla, Hayerech, the right one. So Haganav, the Ganav, although you only have one pasuk, but the extra hay would be telling me that, it's only by a Ganav and not by when you claim that it was lost. Then the Gemara goes back. So now according to the one who will Tavai B'Toin Tan's Ganav, they're both talking about by a guy who claims it was stolen. The meat late Toin Tan's Ovid, so therefore, he uses one of the extra psukim to teach you that we're excluding if you claim that it was lost. So Ganav Haganav my darshbe. What does he dash from the hay? He doesn't need it to teach you excluding Avad, because he has an extra pasuk teaching you that. So Malachi would tell you, you need it for something else. And he says, if someone makes a claim that by a deposit that he was watching, that it was stolen, so he has to pay when he's caught with it, that double the amount. If he went and he slaughtered it or he sold it, so then he has to pay 4 or 5 times the amount, like the Ganav himself. That's learned out from Ganav Haganav, which the last Taisus interesting points out. He says, even though that comes out that one of them is darshaning it as a riboy and one is darshaning it as a miyut, said you don't have to be concerned for that because everything is according to the svara of the drash, because one of them is including dalad v'hei from the hay, the other one's excluding a taina of avad. So Taisa points out that seemingly contrast. He says, yeah, that's not a difficulty. Now the Gemara continues to go back and forth on this point between these two different shittas. Laman, according to the one that says chad beganav, v'chad b'toyin tanz ganav, that one pasuk, the first pasuk is talking about ganav, and the second pasuk is talking about by a guy claims he was stolen. The high ganav haganav, so he uses the extra hay. Afke lemuti tanz of it. So he says, okay, how do I know that you exclude if you claim that it was lost? He doesn't have an extra pasuk. He knows it from the hay of haganav. Then the question now becomes, Reb Chibur Abba Benole. And again, that's what he's saying. We keep on going back and forth because someone's going to have to dash on something from that. So now, where does he know that drasha? Where does he know that by Toyin Tanis Ganav there's a chiyuv of Dal V'Hei? Can't learn it from the hay because he already used the hay to tell you to exclude if you make a claim of that when it was lost that you're not going to be chayiv kefil. So Malachi would tell you hekeshahu, it's a hekesh. How so? So Rashi explains that since these psukim are near each other, as we said, these are two psukim, one right after the other. So the halacha of Ganav and Toyin Tanis Ganav are compared to each other. Just like by a Ganav, we know the Torah tells us that he pays 4 or 5 times the amount if he's Tabach HaMachav, if he slaughters or sells the sheep or the ox. Okay, then also by Toyin Tanis Ganav, he's going to pay 4 or 5 times the amount. Now, even though you could ask and say, wait a second, what are you comparing to a Ganav himself? That he's chayav kefil even without an oath. It's just by stealing. But by Toyin Tanis Ganav, that you need an oath, maybe you would say that's a flawed comparison. This is the famous terminology, be'im ashivan al hekesha. We don't ask on a hekesh, as the Gemara tells us later on, Daf Kovav Amid Beis. So, although you would have a question on this hekesh and say, okay, maybe Ganav is chayav dal v'hei because he's chayav for just stealing without swearing. Here, for Toyin Tanis Ganav, it has to be with swearing. You don't ask the Torah L'maisa putting them together, and therefore you're going to learn out the halachas from each other. Actually, it's another interpretation, but it seems to be that the first one's the primary interpretation. Now, it says the Gemara, Bishlam Elamanda Amma. So the Gemara continues to ask. We understand according to the one who says, Chad Beganav, Chad B'toyin Tanis Ganav. Okay, one pasuk is by a thief, and the second pasuk is by a guy who claims that there was a thief. So Shaper, it makes sense. We could learn out Ganav from over here regarding the halacha of kefil. Elmandam, according to one who says Tarai B'toyin Tanis Ganav, both psukim are by a guy who claims it was stolen. Where do you actually know that halacha of kefil regarding a Ganav himself? If you're going to say, oh, Leisa B'kabel Chaymer, what do you mean it's Kabel Chaymer? From B'toyin Tanis Ganav. If a guy's claiming it was stolen, he's going to be chayav to kefil. A Ganav himself for sure. But then says the Gemara, but then you run into the problem of daya. Anytime you make a Kabel Chaymer, daya liv minadin lis kenidin. Then it's sufficient to learn out what you're learning out from to be as much as what you're learning out from. But then you limit it to that source. So Malaham B'shvudin, just like over there by 20 times the Gam, he's only chayiv, as we pointed out from the pasuk Nikra Balabais Elikim, only when he swore to that effect. Avkam B'shvur, maybe a Ganav also only chayiv kefil when he swears, I didn't steal it, and then they catch him. How do you know he's going to be chayiv as the halacha is even when he just steals it? Says Gemara, Nafkalem and the Tana Bechizkiah. Learns it out from the Brisa of the Yeshiva of Chizkiah, who darshans a different pasuk that's talking about by Ganav himself. The pasuk of Im Himotzi Tematzi B'Yad HaGeneva, if you find the guy with the stolen object. Now, Rashi's bothered. Why is the Gemara picking a drasha of Tan Bechizkiah, as we're going to explain? Why don't you just say the pasuk? The pasuk says clearly, if you find the guy with the stolen objects, etc., says Shnai Misham, you have to pay double. When it's a pasuk in the Torah, says Rashi, because from the pasuk you can't explicitly learn out but living creatures, as it says, Mishar vat chamar atzechayim, from an ox to a donkey until a living sheep. But from the drasha of Tan Bechizkiah, we end up including everything. So that's why we're going to pick the drasha, and we're not going to bring the pasuk. But there really is a pasuk in the Torah that says explicitly that a gan was chayav for kefil. But we're bringing the drasha. The Tan Bechizkiah, like it was taught in the Yeshiva of Chizkiah, Yoimar, and again, this sets us off on the whole discussion again. Remember, we have a question now, according to one man Amar. One man Amar says that the two psukim are talking about 20 times Ganav, So we lost the opportunity of this pasuk teaching us the halach of kefil. Where does that man know kefil? And we have to know all the halachas of kefil for a ganef. So now we're on to another pasuk, which says, and that's what he's discussing. This is a pasuk of himimotzi timotzi biyoda gneva bishur at chamar at chaim shnam yishalom. So this is where it starts. So Talmid Chizkiah says yom shor gneva. It should really just say that if you find by him what was stolen, and the word shar, everything would be included. Why? Because you would then include anything that's similar to the specific, which a shar is movable and has intrinsic value. Why do I need to say chamor? Why do I need to say seh? And that's what the Brisa explains. Says, yeah, why you need to have all the terminologies. Now, later on, the Gemara is going to explain what is the Brisa asking. But this is not a klal prat a klal, to darshan ke'ina prat. The assumption of the Brisa's question is saying, oh, say these two, I'll include everything ke'ina prat, and then I'll know chamor and seh. What do I have to say them in the Torah? Just say shar and geneva. Problem is the way you're saying it, that you should say shar u geneva, that's not a klal prat a klal. So what makes you think that you'll know the halacha of chamor and seh that you're asking such a question? But that's the way you have to read it, and we'll go back and we'll explain on the next daf what was the Brisa's assumption. But says the Brisa further. It says no. You can't just have shar and geneva. Ilukach, if that would be the case, I would say ma prat mafurish. I would say, well, look at the specific shar. It's covered on mizbech. You could bring it out as a carbon on the mizbech. Avkol. So too. No. We're asking why does it? The Brisa is asking why do you need to say chamor and seh? Just write shar. That's what the Brisa is asking. You'll know everything from that. You'll know chamor because a shar is something that's movable and has intrinsic value, and chamor is the same thing. He says no. Shar is specifically that can be brought as a carbon. I would say that you would only include what's similar to the specific that also has karva gam mizbech that can be sacrificed on mizbech. Oh, that's why it says seh, that you shouldn't say that the klal is coming to include only which is brought on the mizbech, because ma yesh l'chol lahevi. What would you include if you said shar and you're including with the klal and prat to say ke'ena prat that would be brought on the mizbech that's not explicitly said? You would include a sheep. Now, as we continue to talk about Samach Dal Menalv, Kishoim is said, but it says seh. So Hari Se'am already says seh. So Aman Mikaim Geneva, which really when it's asking on Geneva, it's asking on what's the klal, because when you have a klal by the klal, it's really the klal that's including more things that's similar to the prat, because if only said the prat, it would only be a shar. So shar, what do I need geneva for that I'm darshan ke'ena prat to include other things? What would I include from shar? I would include seh. Because seh is also something that's brought on mizbech. Obes state shain seh. So what's geneva? That's the klal coming to include more. L'rabbis kol davar, it's coming to include everything. And that's what geneva is coming to teach us. So therefore I need to have geneva to teach me that you're including everything. Now, the question is, fine. Yom shar seh b'geneva. So fine. Say shar and seh and geneva, and I'll know everything. Why? Because I won't say just shar is teaching you davar karva l'gam mizbeach, because that would be teaching me seh, and it already says seh. So it must be teaching me including everything. Okay, so that's it. Just say shar, seh, and geneva, and package deal. And we're done. I don't need anything more. So it says, the Brisa said no. Ilikach, if it would be like that, I would say like this. Ma prat mafurish, what is the specific that's explicit? Davar kadosh b'bechayra. It's not only karv l'gam mizbeach, it's also things which have the sanctity of the firstborn. Av called davar kadosh b'bechayra, so too anything that has the sanctity of the firstborn. And what would I then include from the drasha? I would include maybe one more thing. I would include only a donkey. So ma yesh l'chol lahevi. So what are you including that's not written? Chamar, a donkey. Wait, if that's the case, when the Torah says donkey, it already says a donkey. So then I don't need the klal of Geneva to include anything else. So obviously klal prat is coming to include even other things. So what am I including from the term of Geneva? Oh, l'rabba is called daber. It's including everything. But that's why I need to say shar, chamor, and seh. Because again, if I only said shur, I would have included seh. So it says seh. Okay. So what am I including now? I'm including chamor. Okay. So then says the brayso. So yom shur b'chamor se'u geneva. So just say, okay, say the ox, say the donkey, say the sheep, and say geneva. Bakol b'chlal. I would know everything. So the question is, as Rashi explains, so the word chayim, it says seh chayim. The word chayim, that sounds like it's including all living creatures. What do I need that for? You're already including everything from Geneva. Says the Brayso, no, ilakach, if it would be like that, I would say, ma pratma for is just like the explicit, the specific is explicit, that's balachayim, they're all living creatures. Av kol balachayim, so to what's going to have the halacha of kefil by Geneva is only by a living creature. Ma yesh l'cha lehevi, so what are you including? Shah balachayim, other living creatures. But then kishoy mechayim, when it says aleba de gezach, it's already mentioning living creatures. So Haman Mekayim Geneva. So what am I including then from the klal of Geneva? I already know living creatures from Chaim. L'Rabba is called Davar. That's how the Brayso ends. It's coming to include all things that to say that a Ganev is going to be Chayiv Kefil on it's because what else am I doing with this klal of Geneva? I would have known it from the word Chaim. Must be, it's not only including living creatures, it's including all things. I can do any time, those things. Wow.